Hello, I'm Dylan.
And I'm Keon.
And this is Trust Your Doctor, that podcast where we keep a secret from our family for 40 years, because this week we watched Demons of the Punjab.
Written by Vinay Patel.
Directed by Jamie Childs.
And aired on November 11th, 2018.
Nice and easy to pronounce name. Except then, I'll find out it's Jamie Chill or something, and DS is silent, and I was saying it wrong. Or all the letters are silent, and his name is just... And I've been saying it completely wrong.
Yeah, maybe he's a relative of that guy from Snake Dance who never talked.
I can't believe you remember that. I can barely remember Snake Dance and the Mara.
You don't remember that? I don't remember his name, but they have to go seek out this wise old man from some alternate dimension or something.
Was Snake Dance the first or the second one with the Mara?
First, I think.
First one, I think.
Pretty sure.
Then the second one, it's turns out we didn't actually get the Mara completely out of you, Tegan. Tegan.
Yeah.
I had to think it was Tegan for a second.
Anyway, this episode
was nominated for a Hugo Award for Best Dramatic Presentation Short Form. It didn't win, but it was nominated.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like it really means anything. Best Dramatic Presentation.
Short
form.
What
is that? Yeah, well, short form means something, I think. But what does that really...
Maybe it encompasses all written sci-fi that's not a novel, I guess.
Well, I mean, the short form makes sense to me. It's the best dramatic presentation is what is that?
It's the best dramatic presentation. Best dramatic presentation.
Yeah, there are two big sci-fi awards, the Hugos and the Nebulas. One of them is voted on by writers of sci-fi. I don't know what one of them is voted on by just random people, just fans, just people.
The Nebula.
Yeah, and the other one there's some qualification for who you have to be and what you have to do to get to vote. I don't know what that is. I think you just have to. I mean, I don't know. I would assume it's you have to be a published sci-fi writer or something like that. But
I feel the one voted on by the people probably, in my opinion, has more weight because I feel the ones just voted on by other writers is just writers in a nice big circle jerk, you have the best novel. No, you have the best novel. And then, completely, not out of touch, but isolated from the public as a whole, almost.
Yeah, and that's interesting. You could look up the list of winners over, the however many years it's been going on and kind of see the differences. There was one...
They diverge more, recently. They've diverged from each other more. There's been less overlap between the two recently as compared to 40 years ago.
Yeah, the ones voted on by just random readers are usually way more quote unquote pulpy. But there was one, I know I've mentioned this book before on some episode of some podcast we've done.
We have so many now.
But
we're like the
book,
Doctor.
I forget what it's called, the Dream Quest of something. I'll put the name in the show notes, but it's sort of a take on Lovecraft. It came out a few years ago, and it was known for being. I'm pretty sure it was the Hugos and the Nebulas voted it the best or something, and it was the first time in a while, so it was kind of a big deal. Mm-hmm. Pretty sure I'm right about all of that. Again, it'll be in the notes if I'm wrong.
You're going to have to write an extensive show note for the first 4 minutes of this podcast.
No, first off, a Wikipedia link.
First off, whether or not we got which award is voted on by the people and which is by the writers right, and then whether you got this book right or not. There's already two notes.
You're underestimating my opinion to condense this all down into not even one sentence, just a sentence fragment.
Well, now that I've said on the podcast, it's going to be two notes. We're going to see that the audience can listen and then look for themselves. Yeah, didn't Arthur C. Clarke, was it Arthur C. Clarke or Isaac Asimov? One of them won the Hugo 6 times, but the Nebula only once. And I'm pretty sure Harlan Ellison won one of them at least once. I read an article the other day about Isaac Asimov, about how he woman, and then Harlan Ellison was like, every time we walked up the stairs, I had to walk between him and Isaac Asimov. Who wrote Foundation? That was Asimov, right?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, so it's Asimov. I had to walk between Asimov and the girl we were with, because if we walked upstairs and Asimov was behind, he would pinch your butt. And then the article proceeded to go on. It was like, Harlan Ellison was known for his own problems dealing with harassing women later in life. So,
well, his stories definitely contain a lot of weird stuff along those lines.
Asimov's stories like barely contain any woman for the first like couple dozen that he writes, and that's basically because by his own admission he's like, I basically knew no woman and had no idea how to write a female character, so I just didn't. And then he got married, and then he started including more women in his stories. You know, whether or not that's correlated, like, you know.
Yeah, probably. Freaking probably.
Anyway, this episode starts with Yaz's family again, who we just saw 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, her grandmother is celebrating a birthday. I don't think we find out how old she is.
No, we just know it's her birthday.
Yeah. Well, maybe you could calculate it, because don't they say her age back in 1947 or whatever year it was? So if they, I mean, I don't remember what it was, but.
Well, so then this episode presumably takes place in 2018, so she's got to be at least 60, because it's, yes, they say 61 years between 47 and 2018.
Yeah.
So she's
probably somewhere in her 80s.
Yeah, probably.
But she, you know, they're celebrating her birthday. She's sort of, I'm not trying to be humble, but she's sort of trying to play it down. Like, you guys didn't have to do this for me. Clearly, like, reveling in the celebration.
And then Nadja's like, of course we did. You're my mom. We have to. And then Umbreen is her name, decides to give her granddaughters gifts. And she gives, I don't remember what she gives to Yaz's sister. But then she turns to Yaz and like, for my favorite granddaughter. And then Nadja's like, stop that.
Take this piece of junk I found in the street. No, it's a broken watch, which, you know, we don't know what it is really yet, but it's clear that it holds some sort of sentimental value for Umbreen.
And
Yaz is like, great, thanks.
Yaz is like, what do I do with this? Do I get it fixed? She's like, no, it must never be fixed. And Yaz is like, but why?
And Umbreen sort of drops some information here that Yaz then goes to the doctor with and asks her to basically Father's Day themselves back into the past and find out like what the heck was going on in Umbreen's youth. Yeah. I forget what prompted that. What prompted her to ask that.
Umbreen's like, I won't tell you the story till you're older, and also the watch must never be fixed. And then I think Yaz asks if it belonged to her grandfather, and I think Umbreen like gives an evasive response or doesn't respond. And I think that's kind of what prompted her to be like, oh, well, wait.
Yeah, presumably Yaz's grandfather is dead. I don't remember whether they actually say he's dead or not.
I don't think they say if he's dead,
he'd be there. If
we don't see him at the party, so...
The doctor is initially reluctant to go along with any of this because all the other times she's taken people to see either their ancestors or, well, not their ancestors, just people from their past.
It's gone poorly.
Yeah. Well, what are all the times she's done it? Father's Day for sure was the big one, or the one that I remember the most at least. I guess the whole River Song debacle counts.
Yeah, I mean, I think so.
But what are some other instances? Are those the only two?
Well, the doctor explicitly doesn't take Tegan back to see her aunt after her aunt gets just brutally murdered by the master.
Yeah, that's one. Looks like the doctor's wisdom waned with age.
I'm trying to think if any of the other reboot companions we saw.
Bill's not exactly, but
the doctor kind of meddled there.
Yeah.
The doctor meddled there.
It's just not gone well, like overall, in concept, in theory. in practice, but also more largely in theory. And doesn't necessarily go well here either.
It goes about as well as it could be expected, really.
Yeah. So they go back. They use
the telepathic circuits.
Yeah, they use the telepathic circuits.
And Chris Chibnall, or I guess Vinay Patel, just hit and runs Doctor Who here because Graham's like, oh, the TARDIS has telepathic circuits, and then the Doctor just goes, well, not exactly. That's just a shorthand for a more complicated system you wouldn't understand. And I'm like, what? What?
Vinay Patel was actually recently announced to be back for Series 12.
Heck yeah.
Writing episode 5, I think.
I think so. Someone else is back. Ed
Sheeran.
Ed Sheeran. Ed Heim or Hein or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't remember what he wrote. I don't think we've got it yet. I think he writes Kablam actually next week. Or the Witchfinders.
I just remember, people on Twitter were very excited that Vinay Patel was coming back.
Yeah, well, given the quality of this episode.
Yeah, this is the best of this season. I'd put it over Rosa.
I put it over Rosa. This is my favorite of the season.
Yeah, I'd put this, I'd say, top 10 of the reboot, I would say.
This is pretty close to that for me, too. Yeah. I'm not going to argue with that.
I mean, heck, I put Rosa in my top 10 of the reboot, so...
Yeah, so if you put this over Rosa, then this has to be... Unless I
kick Rosa out.
Well, I was going to say, unless Saranga and Arachnids are above this and, are just enough to nudge both this and Rosa out of your top 10.
Every new episode is just a better one. Every new episode.
So your top 10 is just the most recent 10 episodes of Doctor Who that you've watched.
So they go back to. They think they're going back to Lahore because Umbreen mentioned living in Lahore when she lived in Pakistan. But they get there and they're just sort of in this field, this sort of hilly wilderness area, and they're like, what the heck? This is just like the middle of nowhere.
Oh, one of the other things that Umbreen says at her party is that she was the first woman married in Pakistan. So
yeah,
I think that's another thing that Yaz was a little about.
Well, I mean,
but it turns out that she wasn't lying. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's not out of the question. Pakistan isn't a very old country.
No, I mean, no, I agree with that.
In terms of its own borders.
I just think Yaz was surprised at this kind of monumental thing.
Claim.
This monumental claim being in her family tree,
Yeah, I get that.
So they almost get run over by the slowest cart in existence. Who the road is pretty long and straight before where the Doctor and gang are standing. So he could have seen them from 3 minutes before.
Prem doesn't give a shit.
but he only mentions something when the horses are right in front of the Doctor. He's like, whoa, get out of the way! I was like, okay, Prim, you jerk. Could have said something earlier.
Now we're introduced to Prem or Prem, whatever his name was. Yeah, who lives nearby. And they're looking. They tell him that they're looking for Umbreen, and he's like, "Oh yeah, just come with me or whatever."
And then there's a holy man walking down the road, and Prem offers him a ride, and he's like, "No, I've walked everywhere in my life, and I'm not going to stop now. You youngsters in your cart go too fast." And I'm like, "This cart's moving at 2 miles an hour."
That's too fast for
oh shoot. I am speed. Ka-chow.
Maybe if he used carts, he could have outran the bullets that shoot him down,
Probably not. If Once Upon a Time in America is anything to be believed, not even cars can outrun bullets.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's no, even, you have to be in a very fast car to outrun a bullet.
You could use that.
Or you could be going towards the bullet, and then it wouldn't even matter.
It hits you faster. Well, you could get in that car that set the land speed record. That's basically just a jet engine strapped to a
pod racer.
Kind of. I mean, It's basically like an F1 car with 2 jet engines strapped to the sides.
Well, you know, I'm not one to like dive deep into like the science of any fictional, you know, world or story, much less Star Wars. But like, I like to think that the pod racers, the pod racers in Star Wars, are just like giant engines just strapped to like a little seat.
I mean, that's basically what they are. Especially Sebulba's.
Yeah. I guess that idea is sort of corroborated by the story itself. Considering if that like little electrical link between the engines is broken, they just spiral out in different directions and kill you.
Yeah, I mean, the pod racers are like the Star Wars version of a lawn chair with 2 jet engines. Anyway, they mention they're all the way from England, that they're family friends from England, and Prem's like, you probably don't want to mention that around here right now. And they're Graham and Ryan and the doctor are kind of confused about this. Yeah, it's too. They're kind of confused about why he would say this, but they just kind of go along with it for now.
They arrive at the house, which I guess is like it's multiple houses near each other. It's Prem's, where Prem lives, and then where Umbreen grew up.
Yeah.
You know, they meet Umbreen. But Yaz has some shocking information, which is that she's sure that Prem isn't her grandfather, despite the fact that he has the watch. They see him with the watch, but it's not him. It's not her grandfather.
Yeah, because Umbreen shows Yaz a picture of her granddad at the beginning of the episode.
Right.
So you, as the audience, are aware also that this is not her granddad.
Yeah, I mean, if you paid enough attention to the picture, which I didn't.
Well, you didn't watch this like I do with Children of the Stones and pause on key frames?
No. But what's also vital here is that we find out Prem is about to be married to Umbreen.
Right, and that Prem is
Hindu and Umbreen is Muslim.
Muslim.
But Yaz says she, you know, her grandmother, you know, Umbreen never mentioned a previous husband before her grandfather.
Right.
And we find out it's because Prem doesn't make it through the episode, but that's a little later.
Well, so they go inside and the radio's on, and basically it's the announcement of the partition of India into India and Pakistan.
Right, which this is sort of, I mean, the plot point that Prem is Hindu and Umbreen is Muslim is like the personal scale of, and I don't know too much about the partition of India, but it's like this is the personal. This is like the separation taken down to like a personal scale, right? Because I mean, some part of this partitioning process was like, all right, Muslims in Pakistan, everyone else in India, type thing.
Yeah,
which wasn't.
I think, yeah.
I mean, I think that's. I
think
I could have done
pretty
more
much
research.
What it was, but you know, I'm not super well versed in the partition of India either.
There's definitely a lot of, even still to this day, there's a lot of like religious tension in India, especially now. Actually, in the recent like months, there's been a huge amount of like religious tension in India.
Yeah, there's been a lot of tension between India and Pakistan for a while. I remember like 10 years ago reading an article that was like just a nuclear war between India and Pakistan would launch the world into nuclear winter for like centuries. And they're like, they don't have a well-stocked nuclear arsenal, but they do both have nuclear weapons. So, or at least I know India has nuclear weapons. I'm pretty sure about Pakistan.
Right. And we meet also Prem's brother, I believe, whose name is...
Something with an M.
Wrote it down. Manesh.
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 And he's like pretty heavily on the pro-partition side of this kind of argument. He's like, you know, you guys over there, us over here. He's like, the radio is making the announcement, and he's already out in the creek drawing up the borders.
He's building the fence.
And they're like, how did you know? And he's like, the map was leaked weeks ago.
WikiLeaks it weeks ago, you fools.
I was like, damn, someone leaked the map.
Yeah, this is, I mean... what we get from this is like this is obviously way before like the internet or any way that this map would have become public in a general sense. So obviously, like this is a small line, but it's definitely I think indicative of like, hey, this guy's involved in like some sketchy circles.
So he there's some tension between Manesh and Prem because Prem's marrying Umbreen. So,
but they hear some commotion out in not
the kind of
woods. Not the woods. It's not.
It's like the forest.
Yeah. It's woods, but it's not like a densely packed woods. It's like more just
woods light.
Yeah. And it turns out that it's the holy man. He's been killed, and they sort of see these creatures near his body. Prem, I think, takes fire, or he takes aim and fires. But it's he's unsuccessful. He doesn't do any damage to the demons of the Punjab.
Now I have become demons of the Punjab.
But it's too late. The holy man's dead. But there's this weird purple dust on his body.
Yeah, and Graham is like, "Oh, did they kill him using a fast-acting poison?" And the doctor's like, "Doesn't seem like he died by poison."
Yeah, and here I kind of want to mention. I've heard that this season starts off really strong with all the companions being, distinct and having their own characters and contributing and doing a lot, and but that later becomes less the case. Like the companions maybe sort of drop off, or they don't do as much, or they just become more generic, or whatever the case may be. But I'm not getting that. What is this? Six episodes in? I still think this is one of the strongest companion teams.
Yeah,
ever.
I mean, Ryan doesn't do anything in this episode. Like, let's not mince
words
here.
No, but I mean, they all like at least on some level contribute to. I don't know, not the dialogue, but like they contribute to kind of, if not what's going on, plot beat to plot beat. Like Ryan has that line, like when he shuts down Manesh at he calls it a stag party. We get their distinct characters in each episode, and they all have sort of their own episodes, right? This and Arachnids in the UK for Yaz type thing. Definitely Saranga Conundrum for Ryan. Definitely Woman Who Fell to Earth for Ryan and Graham.
Yeah, I mean, I think when people say that, they're talking about how like after this episode, it's just like merges into the background for the rest of the season.
On some level, I'll have to see how that's done, but on some level, in theory, I'm okay with that because of this episode and because of Arachnids in the UK.
Well, that is...
It's like not every episode can be a Yaz episode, guys. Like...
Yes, but that doesn't...
but no.
Well, yes, but actually no. Well, yes, but that doesn't mean that every episode that's not a Yaz episode has to be a Ryan and Graham episode as well. I mean, like, at the end of the season, when you look back and compare, like, I guess, episodes, Yaz gets her 2 episodes, and Ryan and Graham get 8. Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you right now, the final 2 episodes of this season are Graham episodes, and that's 2 right there.
Huh.
So, and the Witchfinders is, like, definitely a Ryan and Graham and the Doctor episode. I don't remember Kablam very well, so that one, can't tell you about that one.
Well, I know episode 9.
That's the one with the frog,
right? Is a frog episode. I think it's called "It Takes You Away" or something like that.
Oh, that's the one Ed Heim wrote, who's returning for series 12. He wrote "It Takes You Away."
Yeah.
So
still looking forward to that frog, which I hear is amazing.
I can no longer tell if people who are talking about how great the frog is are talking about it ironically or unironically. Anyway, we get some information here that Prem fought in, I think it was World War II, because this is 47. But like the helmet designs were very reminiscent of World War I.
Well, he fought in Singapore, he says, and I don't know.
So maybe it was pre-World War II or post-World War II.
I question, and I don't know the answer to any of this, so this isn't rhetorical in any way, but was the war he was in even part of World War I/II?
Yeah, I don't know.
It could have just been its own thing. And I know Britain, Singapore used to be a British colony.
Right.
So that maybe it had something to do with that. A lot of stuff I could have looked up for this and didn't. But he was.
Yeah, just gonna come out, just gonna say it right now that I'm completely not versed in any of this history. I'm just not gonna mince words here. And that's on me. That's on me.
Yeah, maybe that 1-star review we got on iTunes recently
was right.
Well, I mean, it was definitely. I imagine because the person said that the podcast does very little research. And I assume that they were talking about our early episodes, which that's 100% true. And I'm surprised we don't have more 1-star ratings, to be honest, with what we have out there. But maybe it's still true to this day. I would like to think we've improved, but maybe it still holds true.
Ouch.
The big takeaway from this flashback that we get with Prem is that Prem and Manish's older brother died in this war, and that's when Prem saw the demons.
Right, they were standing over his brother's body,
right,
and he wasn't sure what they were doing, but he had assumed that they killed him.
Yep. So the doctor's obviously very suspicious of all of this.
Mm-hmm.
She tells everyone that they're probably aliens and not demons.
Well, so they kind of run through the forest for a bit and find
there's completely conspicuous demon bunker just baked into the ground.
Yeah, well, they go in and the doctor's like, oh shoot, this is a Thajarian hive, and we're like, what? And she says, or she explains that the Thajarians were the most deadly assassins in the universe.
Yeah, so these guys are very similar to the Stenza, honestly, in their backstory, and very similar to the Predators from the Predator universe.
Originally, yes, because the Thajarians were assassins who killed people for money, I guess.
Well, on other planets too, that's the thing. Humans are assassins as well, right? But we don't assassinate off-world.
Yeah, the Thajarian was an assassin species.
Yeah.
But then we find out that they're actually completely different than all those other things that you mentioned later on when they actually sit the doctor down and this is what's actually going on. Because the doctor here is making a lot of assumptions.
Yeah, they do the classic sci-fi thing of this one species is this one thing and just that. They're not anything else.
But then it inverts
Nominated for a Hugo, baby.
But then it inverts it because this one species is actually one other thing.
Yeah, exactly.
This entire species is actually this other thing. Instead of the expected, these members of the species are actually okay. And not the one thing the rest of the species is. Instead, it's the entire species is this other thing.
Yeah.
So the doctor steals this vial of purple goo.
Yeah, they go into the sort of bunker, and the doctor Indiana Joneses the purple substance.
Which the Thajarians warp back in, and the doctor's should have thought more before I did that.
So they warp back out, and there's some sonic screwdriver explanation for the warp or something, but
it's T-Mat.
No, did they actually say that?
Well, they didn't say T-Mat, they said Transmat, which was T-Mat's full name.
Yeah.
T-Mat's back. From that second Doctor story where he had to fly that rocket to the moon to fix T-Mat.
Yeah, it was the Seeds of Doom, I think.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Seeds of Death.
Yeah.
Seeds of Death.
The one where him... was it Zoe or Victoria in that one?
I can't remember.
And Jamie, the Scotsman who has no idea what rockets are, fly a rocket to the moon. I'm amazed I remember that.
I mean, it was the first one with the Ice Warriors. No, the second one with the Ice Warriors.
Yeah, second. The first with the Ice Warriors was a Base Under Siege. In that Base Under Siege season, the Ice Warriors.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Need more Base Under Siege stories. So, just looking through my notes.
Yaz and Graham actually have this sort of heart-to-heart because they were, instructed or whatever to wait back at the house.
Graham drops little bombs of knowledge on everyone here.
Yeah, I didn't. Graham is sort of made out to be this like wise old man in this episode, when that's not really who he's been yet. Until this episode, I should say. But Yaz reveals that she feels lied to, because Umbri never revealed this entire history she had with Prem and all this stuff. But Graham, I actually put this down as a quote. For later in the episode, but in more, fewer or more words, Graham says something along the lines of like, we all have our own secrets, and we don't really know what is important in our own lives until after the fact or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Until we die. He's basically saying that you can't like judge your life. Like, you can only judge your life in retrospect, kind of thing.
Yeah. Or, like, what in your life might not... Like, if you were to tell your life story to someone, you might leave out details that, if you were to not leave them out, would actually stand out to someone else as the biggest details, but to you, it's just something you can gloss over. Type thing.
Right. So they go back, and the Doctor uses the T-mat locks to block the Thajarans out of the house,
the area.
barn, the area.
I think it's done in this way where it's like it's this multiple house. It's not a town for sure. It's definitely just like the middle of nowhere, but like it's a multiple house area.
And the Thajarans show up and they're like, you don't know what's going on, stop messing with things you don't understand. And the Doctor's like, BS, and just beams them out. She's like, get out of here.
So they decide to go ahead with the wedding.
Yeah, Umbrine's like, this isn't going to stop me. I am marrying or bust. So they split the woman and the men into 2 different houses, I think.
Yeah. They go and kind of do their own little thing.
The Doctor is what are they actually doing?
They're doing some henna
okay.
stuff.
Because she's like, I never used to do this as a man. And they're like, what? And then she says, I thought this was funny. My references to body and gender regeneration are all in jest. Meanwhile, in the men's house,
Manesh is stirring up trouble.
Manesh is like, you can't marry her. Prem, this is a bad idea.
It's like, well, you should have said that sooner than 6 hours before the wedding, buddy. Like,
well, he says this really mean thing where he's like, I'm here with the brother who didn't come back and the one who I wish didn't come back. And I was like, oof,
right,
rough. And then that's when Ryan's like, hey man, not on his stag night.
Flashbacks to Rory's stag party, which was way, way less of an emotional hit or punch to the gut than this was.
Well, I mean, at first maybe, but then when the Doctor pops out and is like, your fiance just tried to make out with me, I'm sure that was an emotional punch to the gut for Rory.
Maybe for Rory, but not for me. There's... I mean, who in the long run, like, who really... Amy and Rory were the weakest companions of the new series of Doctor Who. In retrospect.
I think Amy is the single weakest companion. I liked Rory.
Rory, they're inseparable.
Rory had
2 parts of the same amalgam,
Rory had such a... They're a dyad in the Force, you might say. Rory had such a nice character arc, though. Growing from weak, wimpy nerd to buff,
to slightly
long-lived centurion. Who's seen some stuff and probably has PTSD.
Who's seen some stuff. Check out Triple Play, a movie trilogy podcast. That should be coming back pretty soon. If all goes according to plan. If we wrap up Inevitable, a classic sci-fi podcast on which we're watching Children of the Stones, check that out.
If all goes to plan, as it usually never does.
But yeah, this scene is all part of it, but I loved this episode's emotional story, and how it takes this like political thing that like, especially I think well, for sure to people in the U.S. and probably also for a lot of people in the U.K. This thing that's just part of history, part of political history, the partition of India and Pakistan, and it turns it into this. I mean, we kind of see the spectrum of it from like this political thing to like how this is affecting people, like how it's affecting this one family, and that's really all we see in this episode is how this stuff affects this one family, because we don't really get anyone else until the very end when they come to kill Prem.
Yeah, we get to see the whole story on a very personal, like we get to see the whole history, I guess, on a very personal level. And with this family,
right? And we also, I mean, it's definitely made out. It's made clear through this episode that like the violence and the hatred that arises from this isn't, you know, a good thing. It's maybe not. Maybe it is warranted. I don't know. Use the word warranted, which is what I was gonna say. But you know, it's definitely not a good thing. But I think you also kind of see this from Manish's point of view as well, or like I don't know. I could definitely see like the emotional side of this episode from his perspective as well. Like he himself feel whether you know what he thinks is right is actually right in the long run, but he definitely feels betrayed by his own family.
Yeah.
Which on that level, I think you can understand it.
Yeah. You know? I mean, I don't want to go too deep into this comparison that I'm about to make, but you could, I think, if you looked into it, you could definitely draw parallels between the way Manesh is, at least to his family, they almost think he's been like radicalized, right? Where he's like fighting to basically enforce the partition, and with how a lot of like right wingers in America have become radicalized for, I think, similar reasons. You know, it seems to me anyway that Manesh is like he feels left behind by his family because both his brothers went off to fight in the war and he didn't. He had to stay home and work the farm, and Umbreen says this later that they basically like had no food, and that Manesh would like often days go without food in order to make sure that the rest of his family could have food. So he's like kind of feeling underappreciated and left behind, and then so he turns to this, you know, he listens to all these kind of radical people on the radio and becomes radicalized. Like I said, I don't want to go too deep into this comparison, but I think you could draw a lot of parallels between that and like what happened or what is happening in America in 2016 through today. A lot of people who voted for Trump said that part of the reason why they did that is because they felt left behind by society and by their families and other people, and that they felt like Trump spoke to them. So, just an interesting parallel, I guess, a thing that you can pull from this episode.
Yeah.
But this is when the Thajarans, they kind of beam in and they take the doctor away. This is actually before they split up, I think. Because is it before they split up? No, it's after, right?
No, yeah, because the Thajarans break the seal or whatever.
Yeah, so it's after they split up and they come back together, and then the Thajarans make off with the doctor, and they basically explain to her that while their entire species was out assassinating people, their home planet got destroyed. We don't know by whom.
The Stenza.
It might be. For some reason, I have this like vague memory that it might be mentioned later in this episode. Not in this episode, in the season, that the Stenza destroyed the Thajaran homeworld, but I don't remember. Yeah, I genuinely don't remember.
Yeah, was it the Stenza's modus operandi to destroy worlds?
I think in Ghost Monument, it's implied or outright stated that it is.
Yeah. They definitely weren't on a quest to destroy Earth.
No, yeah, that was like them deciding who their next leader was going to be. If Tim Shaw was going to be, or Tim Shaw was going to be worthy. That basically the Thajaran planet got destroyed while they were out assassinating people, and they came back, and because no one was there to mourn the loss of the Thajarans who were still on the planet when it got destroyed, the remaining members of the species / race decided to change their ways and become they bear witness to people who die alone or unwatched.
Right.
Because, I mean, Prem's clearly not dying alone in this episode because there's all the people standing right in front of him, shooting him.
Well,
I think it's more of a like unwitnessed by people
Who care? Who would
care,
mourn? Yeah,
yeah.
people who would mourn you, because
Yeah.
I mean,
The unmourned.
ostensibly, there was someone there to whoever killed the Thajarans, whoever destroyed their world, witnessed that. But like, did they mourn it? Type thing, And that's the thing also of like why the end is such an emotional gut punch again, is because Manesh is there, and because of this entire setup, you get that like, okay, Manesh in the end actually didn't. At the end, he was totally removed from caring about his brother.
Yeah. But yeah, so the doctor comes back and she explains like, yeah, Prem's gonna die today to Yasmin and the gang, because the doctor's like, they've explained everything, I understand everything, and Yas is like, I want to know right now. So the doctor says that they can't change anything, and I think the Thajarans mentioned like the fixed point in time thing, because the doctor's like, give him one day, and they're like, we're not gods. Also, like fixed. What do they say? The fixed flow of time cannot be changed. And the doctor says something like, I know.
Yep. So they can't really do anything. They continue on. They hold the wedding the next morning.
Graham like gives Prem like an emotional hug. He's like, you're a good man, Prem. Prem's like, hang on.
And Prem gives Umbreen the watch.
Yeah, there's this thing where like Umbreen does a Hindu thing at their wedding. Umbreen drags them out to the border with Pakistan because she's like, I want to be the first woman married in Pakistan. And so then she does a Hindu tradition, which is tying the hands together when you get married. And then when they're back at the house, Prem does a Muslim thing where he gives her the watch. But he calls it something, and I unfortunately don't remember.
Like a dowry or something like that. I don't know. I don't remember either. But he drops the watch, and that's how it cracks.
He feels really bad about it, but then she's like, don't, because now this moment is forever sealed in time in the watch. Like in this watch, our moment is like sealed. And then Manesh, she offers Manesh some food. She's like, since you fed the family, now allow me to feed you as my brother. And he's like, I didn't do it for you, Umbreen. I did it for my family. And he storms out, and the doctor's like, I'll go talk to him.
Right. So they hold the wedding. The doctor goes off to the little shed or whatever. And she finds out that Manesh has called in some guys, his buddies.
Yeah. Yeah. The doctor actually officiates the wedding earlier. I don't know if we mentioned that, because part of the reason why I guess Umbreen's mom didn't want to go through with the wedding anymore is because they didn't have anyone to officiate it because no one was respectable. But then Umbreen's like, a doctor's respectable.
Yeah, it was actually funny because Umbreen was first like, Mom, like, I don't care about respectability. Like, this is a new era, and I don't care about your old notions of, all this stuff. And then the doctor's like, oh, I'm the doctor. And she's like, oh, doctor, that's respectable. Like, she immediately jumps right back on board with it. But yeah, some guys show up on horseback and confront Prem. They sort of call Prem out.
Well, Prem tells Umbreen and her family to get everything that they need and to run over the border, basically.
Right.
And then he'll go out and distract Manesh. Yeah,
and we find out that these guys are, from the nearby, town or whatever, they're neighbors. They know each other.
Yeah, Prem mentions that he fought in Singapore with one of them, I think.
Right.
And Manesh says they're looking for people who don't belong. Interesting choice of words. Prem basically, like, begs Manesh not to do this. And then Manesh just Kylo's Prem.
Wow. Yeah, as the Thajarans. We get this very interestingly shot scene where you see you're seeing it in the back. You're seeing Prem get shot down in the background as the Thajarans watch, and as the doctor, Yaz, Graham, and Ryan walk away, not watching.
Because they run away and they can see it in the distance, and the Thajarans kind of warp in between the doctor and Prem, and they just tell the doctor and co, like, you can leave, we'll take it from here.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that, like, Yaz doesn't watch, because I think,
too sad.
Well, I think that's all part of it, right, is that the Thajarans only witness the deaths of people who would go unmourned, and I think if Yaz saw this, she would definitely mourn it, or at least more heavily. She would have been probably mourn it more heavily if she actually like looked at the death and saw him get shot down.
Yeah.
But no, that's the job of the Thajarans here.
And then they add Prem's head to their like floating head gallery of people they've watched die, I guess. And the doctor takes... Well, we actually just cut straight back to, like, Yaz back with her grandma. And she talks about, like, how she must have lived through so much, how Umbreen must have lived through so much and seen so much. And Umbreen's like, do you want to know about the watch? And Yaz is like, no, you can tell me another time.
Yeah, and this was weird to me. Do you think Umbreen remembered Yaz?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I was going back and forth between whether I thought so or not, but in the end, I don't think she did.
I don't think she does. I think the trauma of the day would like overshadow this person who showed up for one day. Also, like, are you really going to remember this person who showed up for one day in your life 50 years ago?
No, yeah. And even if you did, you wouldn't jump to the conclusion of like, hey, this is time travel. You just say like, this is just a very weird coincidence.
Yeah, it's like how Marty's mom doesn't remember that he shows up like at her high school dance.
Ostensibly.
Pretty sure she doesn't remember. And yeah, so and then we end with this really interesting like version of the Doctor Who theme.
I didn't hear this again because, again, I'm watching these recorded from BBC One, or not BBC One, BBC America, and they just skip the credits.
Damn. It's this really, like, haunting vocal, not like vocal, but like choral almost, arrangement of the Doctor Who theme.
Yeah, I'll have to look that up because I didn't get any of that.
Damn. Did you get the preview for Kablam?
No, I got the credits in a little box in the bottom left corner of the screen while they played a trailer for Series 12.
Great.
Yeah.
Series 12, which you should add, we've now 2 for 2 on having episodes spoiled for us.
I don't mind spoilers, to be honest, but it is just like a little, rubs me the wrong way that I've not avoided the spoilers.
I wanted to go into this season not knowing anything.
You thought you'd be able to, didn't you?
I was hoping. Let's say I realistically was like, Doctor Who fans are the worst at spoiling things.
Yeah, you know that we were talking about this before recording, but that whole initiative to get people to not spoil the Rise of Skywalker like worked. You know, it really resulted in a lot of people being like, "Hey guys, like, don't spoil this movie. Like, people are not going to see it on day one. They're not going to go to that midnight viewing. Don't spoil it. Don't spoil it," and being really annoying and posting that everywhere. You know, it all worked.
Yeah, it worked for Endgame too. I mean, like, don't spoil Endgame, no spoilers, you know.
Well, the weird thing about Endgame is that you know the site Your World of Text. It's just which, if you don't know what that is, it's just this giant ASCII text board that people can write whatever they want on. And I went on Your World of Text for the first time in probably 10 years, right before Endgame came out, and there were just spoilers. Like, the only thing on Your World of Text was Endgame spoilers.
That's hilarious.
Not that I care, but yeah.
You know, speaking of Star Wars spoilers, one of my friends saw Rise of Skywalker, and he was telling me the other day, he's like, you know, I was looking at all these fan theories for, you know, what was going to happen in Rise of Skywalker, like, you know, after The Last Jedi. And I read one, and then I saw the movie, and it was just the entire plot of the movie. And it just turned out I had read, like, a leak of the entire movie before I saw it, disguised as a fan theory, and I'm like, damn, that sucks.
Yeah.
Shout out to when I saw Force Awakens and waited in line to go inside to see the movie, and the previous showing came out, and the people who came out, like, they were talking about the movie, and the person standing right next to me was like, damn, they just spoiled, like, the entire movie for me. Anyway, I wanted to talk just briefly about how this episode, like, the Tajarans, the Doctor assumes that they're the bad guys.
They're bad.
She makes basically like a snap judgment that they're bad because they used to be assassins. And a lot of things in this episode actually like kind kind of point to the fact that the Doctor almost is like the antagonist in this episode. She's the one who's like, we shouldn't get involved in anything here. We need to leave. But then because there's aliens, she's like, nope, never mind. Now we have to get involved. And then even still, she like inserts herself into the wedding as the officiator to make sure it goes forward. And then she basically kicks the Thajarans out. I think something really interesting visually is that the T-mat locks that keep people away from the Thajaran ship are originally blue in color. And then when the Doctor hacks them to keep the Thajarans out, they turn red, which I think is interesting because red is always associated with a very like dark or evil or antagonistic color or angry.
Yeah.
And the fact that they go red when the Doctor's using them rather than vice versa, which I think would be typical for a Doctor Who episode. Something would be red or evil and the Doctor would appropriate it for her own use and it would turn, blue or green or whatever.
Yeah, that is interesting.
And
the Doctor and co. don't, and as it turns out, can't really have an impact on anything that's going on. Mm-hmm. In a sense, they probably just make things worse. Or if not worse, they definitely don't make anything better.
Yeah, they just bear witness kind of to these events.
But even in the end, they leave that to the Thajarans in a way. I mean, they do. Yeah, they bear witness to all of it. But then the big thing, which is Prem's death, they don't even do that really.
What I do think is interesting and something that I really like about the Doctor in this episode is that when she does get teleported away by the Thajarans and they explain that their entire world died, they're doing something with their hands that is clearly like a symbol of mourning. And like the instant the Doctor finds out that that's what happened, she instantly apologizes for antagonizing them, and immediately like she starts doing the same thing with her hands, like as a sign of respect. And I thought that was like a really nice touch from whoever's decision that was.
Yeah.
Just showing that like she could, and that's I think a big theme of this season actually is that the Doctor is like, this is something that I don't think has been touched on a lot, is the Doctor like admitting that she's wrong a lot. It happened in Saranga when what's his name was like, hey, Astos was like, you're being selfish right now. Like everything you're doing right now is just making everything worse for all the rest of us, and you're not helping either yourself or us. And she instantly goes, you know what, you're right. I'm sorry. And then like in this,
does the same thing here.
Yeah, when the Thajarans are like, we're not assassins, we just bear witness. We're like here for a good purpose. And Gran calls them aliens with compassion. And like the Doctor instant's like, you're right. You know what? I'm sorry. I made a judgment based on what I thought you guys were as a species, and I was wrong. And I think that's interesting. I'm, keen to see if it like continues throughout the season, actually, because I don't remember if it does, but it is something that I don't think has been explored a lot in Doctor Who to this point. So it's kind of a neat, direction to go in.
Sure.
Because like the 11th Doctor, I think that 10, 11, and maybe to an extent 12, though I think by the end 12 was like softening up a lot. We're like very reluctant to, if ever, to admit that they were wrong about something.
Well,
and even when they did, they like never apologized for all the chaos they caused with their wrong assumptions.
Yeah, I think that actually goes back to the thing we were saying before of like how this story kind of shows the full spectrum of like this political thing, but also on a personal level. Because I think kind of what you're saying has that effect for the Doctor as well. Mm-hmm. The Doctor's been a very colonial figure in the past, and this is India and Pakistan moving into post-colonialism, moving into being post-colonial nations, and here we get the Doctor going, more mm-hmm. hands off, or saying like, yeah, I'm not going to control this narrative or whatever, or I'm not going to be able to, type thing.
Right. Right. And that's something actually that I'm realizing is like a theme that's comes in later in this season, with the Doctor recognizing how she's been very colonial, but also like more specific, like she's typically the one like in the position of power and a lot of times, and she kind of uses that unilaterally to make decisions for people. And I think that's something that like comes up. I'm thinking specifically of the Witchfinders when they're like, you're a woman, so therefore you're a witch, and she kind of has this realization like, damn, is this what it's like to just like be bossed around by men? Like, damn. Was that me for 12 incarnations?
Yeah.
So, yeah, really good episode. I like this episode a lot.
Yeah.
And there's definitely a lot that you could unpack and find in this episode.
Yep. And hey, I actually had a quote this week.
So did I, actually.
Well, you usually do.
That's true.
You usually do the actual job that we set out for ourselves when we created this quote section. But, you know, we might have the same one, so
We don't,
I'm just going to go for it. This is when Yaz and Graham are sort of talking to each other. Graham says, I honestly don't know whether any of us know the truth of our own lives because we're too busy living them from the inside. And he delivered that way better than what I just did. But that's the quote. That's what it was.
That's a good one. Mine is from, I think it's from when Graham, well, it's after the holy man gets killed and they're talking with Pam, and I think it's Graham who says the first one. This is kind of, it's two quotes, I guess, but someone says to Prem, because he's talking about Manesh, you know, we all need to find our own path in life, and then Prem responds with, some of us need more guidance than others.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. And the doctor, as always, mentions a couple famous people in this.
Right.
She mentions Einstein.
I think she mentions officiating Einstein's wedding, so
Right.
she's definitely met Einstein. Unless she did it like via video call or something. And then she does mention another one that I'm surprised that like the wiki, which is like so freaking anal retentive about minor details,
Grapes.
like didn't pick up on. But at some point when her, Prem, and Ryan are walking through the forest or the woods, Prem says something like, you know, I can't believe I'm like fighting alongside the English again, like after you guys are like dividing up my country. And the doctor says, I'll pass on a word to Mountbatten if I run into him again. And I was like, is that someone I should know? So this was actually some research I did do for this episode. First I thought she said like Mark Batten, and I thought that was the name. I had to like do a lot of research to figure out that she actually said Mountbatten. Apparently this guy, his full name is, I've got it here. He's Louis Mountbatten, the first Earl Mountbatten of Burma, who was apparently, I did a little bit of reading. I didn't go super in depth because it was pretty late, but link it in his Wikipedia page in the show notes. But anyway, he was someone who was involved in the partition, like a government official who was involved in the partition. And from what I read, may have been the guy who actually ended up drawing or being heavily involved with drawing the borders they went with, which is, I think, why the doctor mentions him here. But apparently I was reading he was initially against partition, but then like apparently after he came to India, he like changed his mind and was like, partition is the only way forward. So
yeah, that's all I really had.
Yeah, that's all I had. I guess I was just going to say on the topic of that famous person, it's interesting. I think this is the first like famous person she's met who would be considered like an antagonist or an enemy of the protagonists of the story.
I guess.
Anyway,
yeah, you're right about that, I think.
Nothing else from me.
Yeah, same here.
If you would like to email us, you can reach us at thedoctor@decorativevegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, your thoughts on Demons of the Punjab. You can find us on YouTube at Decorative Vegetable. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify, all at Trust Your Doctor. Be sure to leave a rating if you like the show.
Check us out on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor, like us on Facebook. Also check us out on Twitter at TYD Podcast, and follow us on Twitter. And next time we're going to be watching
Kablam.
Kerblam. But until then, the end.